On March 18th, we sat down and broadcast Rose Icke 1, our first conversation of the year, where I asked you to make sense of the early days of the coronavirus pandemic and global market crash as the UK was not yet on total lockdown. In this conversation, you spoke about COVID-19 and your concept of problem, reaction, solution. You questioned the motives of the World Health Organization, and you warned of a looming Hunger Games society. This episode immediately went viral and was watched over 10 million times by people from around the world who were keen to listen to a different narrative than that of the mainstream media and governments. Then on April 6th, we broadcast our second conversation of 2020, Rose Icke 2, that became the second largest YouTube live stream in the world that day, only behind that of the President of the United States, Donald Trump. With 65,000 concurrent viewers, nearly 4 times the previous live stream, this episode was expected to reach 40 million views, making it the largest video podcast in human history. In that conversation, you described the COVID-19 misdiagnosis and the misclassifications of deaths, dangerous 5G technology rollouts, the upcoming vaccine agenda, economic totalitarianism, and the weaponization of fear. Unfortunately, just 30 minutes later, while you were still at our studios, the entire live stream episode was deleted and banned on YouTube with no explanation and no communication to us. 24 hours later, after the BBC broke the news, our representatives at YouTube accused you of being a quote-unquote COVID-19 denier and subsequently deleted and banned an additional 50 of your videos and my personal vlogs from YouTube. Next, Instagram, Facebook, and Dropbox all followed suit by deleting and banning our videos, and then London Real was completely deplatformed from LinkedIn and Vimeo without explanation. But we fought back and continued to host both episodes, Rose Icke 1 and Rose Icke 2, on our website to tens of millions of viewers, and we still do, despite sustaining multiple highly sophisticated malicious attacks to our technology platforms. Around the same time, David, you were completely deplatformed from both Facebook and YouTube for producing, quote, health misinformation that could cause physical harm. Of course, we all know that if this policy was universally applied, all of mainstream media and most of governments would have been deplatformed long ago. Next, the UK regulator Ofcom, who is controversially also in charge of issuing 5G licenses in this country, censored the broadcast of Rose Icke 1 on the television channel London Live. Ofcom said it, quote, risked causing significant harm to viewers. At this point, we had had enough and decided we could no longer rely on the third party for live stream broadcasting, nor accept the imposition of their agendas on our editorial policy. As I've said before, David, we're not here to take part, we're here to take over. So we began crowdfunding our digital freedom platform, which has now raised over $1.3 million worldwide from over 34,000 members of the London Real Army, fighting for our most basic human right, freedom of speech. This has been an unbelievable vote of confidence in our fight against the tyranny of censorship. On May 3rd, we successfully live broadcast Rose Icke 3 on this brand new digital freedom platform to over 1.366 million unique viewers, making it the biggest live stream of a conversation in human history and a tremendous victory over the dark forces of censorship and oppression. 6 weeks later, on June 14th, we broadcast Rose Icke 4, where we found ourselves in a brand new world order. The media and government agenda had changed 180 degrees from COVID-19 pandemic and global lockdown to riots and protests surrounding the Black Lives Matter movement, their unidentified fundraisers, and their ulterior motives. We witnessed anger, violence, the tearing down of monuments, and calls to defund the police across the USA and throughout the world. Which brings us to today and the broadcast of Rose Icke 5, where the world has gone a major shift. Once again, we're seeing a massive spike in newly reported COVID-19 cases in America, Brazil, and Asia. Meanwhile, in Europe, it's preparing itself for another total lockdown, with my sources inside the government indicating that France, Germany, and the UK will soon completely seal off its borders. We've also seen the imposition of mandatory face masks required everywhere from public transport to shops, even schools. We soon expect masks to be required outdoors in most major countries around the world. Meanwhile, Moderna, the pharmaceutical company with ties to Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci, is conducting phase 3 human clinical trials on a coronavirus vaccine with dangerous side effects. Yet they continue to pour billions of dollars of citizen taxpayer money into these treatments. We see lawlessness taking place in major American cities, while police forces are powerless to act because of budget cuts or even worse, their own criminal prosecution for defending the law. David, the world is approaching a state of complete Armageddon. We desperately need the answer from you today. Before I start, I want to ask again for everybody watching this to please take a few seconds and share this link now via the sidebar to any and all of your social media channels. Simply ask your friends and family to give us 15 minutes and they can decide. David, as I mentioned before, the past 5 months have been some of the most challenging in my entire life. My reputation has been questioned in the press. My business is under threat. My basic human right to express myself is being denied every single day. But this has also been the most empowering time of my life, with millions of people from around the world rising up and voicing their support for our movement. As a result, I've never been so steadfast in my convictions to fight for the basic fundamental right to freedom of speech and freedom of the press. And that is why we are here broadcasting today. David, thank you for your 30 years of tireless work and for your own conviction to fight on. As I've said before, I might not agree with everything you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. So, where do we begin? Perhaps we start with our location. We are not at London Real Studios, David. We are on the Isle of Wight, your home, because you refused to acquiesce, to kowtow, to comply with government requests for you to wear a face mask on the ferry trip to London. Why, David?
Well, I've refused to acquiesce to any of the diktats since this started. When they pushed in the lockdown and said in Britain you can only go out once a day, I went out when I wanted. And I said, indeed in one of our interviews, if the authorities want to come to me, people in uniform want to come to me and give me a credible explanation for why going out once a day and going near no one, and going out 10 times a day and going near no one, can possibly be more harmful to anyone 10 times than one, then I might consider acquiescing to their or agreeing to their ludicrous rule. But no one ever knocked my door. And as I've traveled around England, mainland England, in the last few weeks, I've refused to give my name and details in track and trace to anybody. I've refused to put hand sanitizer on to get into a shop when, having seen 2/3 of the back of the bottle telling me how dangerous it is, and the Food and Drug Administration in America now issuing a list of 75 brands you shouldn't use because it's too dangerous, can cause blindness and death. So I've not acquiesced to that. And I certainly wasn't going to acquiesce to the mask. And what's brought this about is we have 2 ferry companies to and from the mainland. And what they've been running, I mean, this just shows how ludicrous, contradictory, and insane it is. During this period of the lockdown, when you crossed with one called White Link, you had to stay in your car. You couldn't get out and go in the lounge. And because they said, that was the safest thing to do. All right. So you sit in your car and you don't have to do anything else. You just sit there and then drive off. Another company, Red Funnel, they were running certain routes, certain times every day where you had to stay in your car. So when this mandatory mask on public transport came in, you could still get across without wearing a mask, stay in your car. And what's happened? The 2 ferry companies have just stopped staying in your car, which is supposed to be, they've been telling us through the lockdown, the safest thing to do. Now you have to get out into the lounge and wear a mask. Not a chance. And let me tell you how ludicrous it is. In Britain, they've just announced that if you are coming back from Spain from holiday, you have to isolate for 14 days. The White Link Ferry Company, I did the other one, but the White Link Ferry Company has just said, if you're returning to the Isle of Wight from a holiday in Spain, you must tell us because we're going to make sure you have to stay in your car. So hold on a minute. So you're saying, because it's more dangerous coming back from Spain, yeah, they have to stay in their car. Yeah, because that's the safest thing to do, right? Yeah. But everyone else now has to get out the car, wear a mask in the lounge. It's incredible. And I was the first mask refusenik in Britain on public transport. I have to be because of the timing. When we did our last interview, I came from the studio down to Portsmouth to get the 1 minute to 12 boat back to the Isle of Wight. And I'm the only passenger. Everyone else is in their cars, and therefore, on the crossing, they're staying in their cars. That's what they did at that time. I'm the only foot passenger. I'm the only one in the lounge, right? So it's a minute to midnight, and the rule, mask on public transport, including ferries, came in at midnight. So I'm standing there, and I watch all these people walk off, passengers. No masks, because it's not yet midnight. So we've got this extraordinarily stupid virus that attacks you by, the time of day and the date on the calendar. So they walk off, and I go to walk on. And they said, no, you've got to wear a mask. I said, first of all, it's not midnight yet, so you can't enforce that. So I walked on, and I walk up into the lounge. This is quite a big ferry, this one. There's no one else to be seen, just little me. And they actually gave me a mask, and I took it with me because it was a bit of a trophy, the first mask to be issued. And about halfway across, because the ferry left, halfway across, captain comes down from the bridge and she said, I just want to talk to you about the mask. I said, okay, yeah, go on. He was a nice chap. He said, I can understand, he said, why you won't wear a mask when you're the only person in the lounge, right? But he said, when we get the other side, would you put the mask on just to walk off the ship? I said, to walk off the ship past all those people sitting in their cars when I'm the only passenger? You must be joking, mate. Of course I'm not going to wear a bloody mask. And I walked off the ship without a mask. But then they kicked in this, you can't stay in your car. You must have a mask on the ship. And at that point, I said, okay, I'm staying on the Isle of Wight then. And I will not acquiesce. I have my food delivered now. There are shops on the Isle of Wight that are intelligent enough not to push this stuff. And so you can go in without a mask and get some stuff. But you see, two things. Given what I'm doing and what I've been doing for 30 years, and part of that is encouraging people not to acquiesce to the impositions by authority and the deletions of freedom. I'm not someone who says, oh no, I'm not going to follow this law, I'm not going to follow that law. I look at it and I say, well, okay, is it justified? And if it's justified, that's fair enough. I'll go with that. But when you are imposing things, not for anyone's health, and we'll get into this, but purely for means of control and behavior modification, which is what this is really all about. It's not being driven by health. It's not being driven by doctors. It's been driven by psychologists. There's a lady in Britain called Professor Susan Icke. And she is one of these scientific advisors to the government. Goodness knows why. She's also a member of the Communist Party of Great Britain, appropriately, I would say, given this is all about bringing in forms of Marxism. And she's been pushing this mandatory mask agenda. Well, she's not a professor of health. She's a professor of psychology. And that's what's driving this. So when I look at this mask situation and I say, I can see that this is not about health, this is about control. And it's about changing the nature of human behavior. And also destroying the sense of individuality. Because what they want with this AI connection to the human brain, which they're talking about and want to bring in around 2030 is the year they've been giving. They want to create a hive human mind where basically you're just a computer terminal with no real individuality. And one of the stepping stones to this is to put masks on people's face. And your individuality's gone. Your humanity's gone. I was on a radio show the other day, and I said to the host, I wonder how many people have walked past people they know when they're in a mask and haven't recognized them. And the host said, happened to me today. So you're driving people apart, and it's about behavior modification.